Case Bhaktivinoda Thakura. We were a few days late. The disappearance day was Wednesday or Thursday, so a little bit late, but it's okay. We're honoring him in any case. Our great acharyas are personalities that just by hearing about them, we get some insight. Each of them are different, but some insight into what pure devotional service looks like. And being inspired by those exalted Vaishnavas, try to hear further about them, try to respect them, try to render some service to that mission that they were representing. Certainly that was Bhaktivinoda Thakura's gift to us. Here's a detail. Bhaktivinoda Thakura wrote 100 books. 100 books. He was a busy personality. He had 10 children. Some of you may have had one child or two. 10? He was a high court judge. Some of you are busy with your occupations. And all of those things combined, he was sought after by many, many, many people to have some of his time. So he was very expert at time management and being very effective with utilization of his time for the mission. One of the reasons that we're here is Bhaktivinoda Thakura, because he had a very strong desire, and in the very year that Srila Prabhupada was born, 1896, he wrote a book in English, his own English language, so he was at least trilingual, at least, probably other. Bengali, of course, and then English, of course, and Sanskrit, of course, and probably some others. So in his own English language, he wrote a book, a small book, and from his own financial resources, he printed it, and from his own financial resources, he distributed it globally to a selected number of universities and made it as a gift to the library of that school. Sri Chaitanya, His Life and Precepts, was the title of the book. Offset printing, the old, but printing press was just getting rolling, and so he was ready to use the printing press to spread the mission, and he did. All the books were printed. The other 99 books, but this one specifically was the life of Lord Chaitanya as a kind of mini summary of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then the precepts was his own distilling of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And he had coined this phrase, the 10 essential teachings of Lord Chaitanya. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He called it Dasamula Tattva. And in his 100 books, maybe 80 of those books have at least a list, and in some cases a list plus a description of what the essential teachings of Lord Chaitanya were. Because he wanted, his explicit intention was, at least the educated people of the world should know who was Lord Chaitanya and what are his teachings. Because the world was in darkness, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give the light. In terms of the Yuga Dharma and the essential teachings of Bhakti and so forth. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur had that vision. He passed that vision on to Bhaktisiddhanta. Bhaktisiddhanta made his following Bhaktivinoda Thakur attempt, sending outside of India, specifically to England, and instructed Srila Prabhupada in very clear, strong terms. That's what he wanted Prabhupada to do, and that's what Prabhupada did. And so we're here. Compliments of, or as a gift from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So having some sense of gratitude, or more than some, a profound sense of gratitude, we're here because of his Krishna consciousness, and the gift of his Krishna consciousness that he wanted to give to all of us. So honoring him is appropriate. You see the dates, the years, and the lunar calendar time when he made his appearance and disappearance. And so the disappearance was June 23, 1914. This means, the World War I was just beginning, is when he disappeared. And a big part of his work was in the latter years of his life. He made his place of residence very near to Advaita Acharya's place of residence in Shantipur. This is his deities that he worshipped in younger age of life. Gaur Gadadhar. Prabhupada gave us Gaur Nitai. And this Gaur Gadadhar worship is specifically appropriate for persons who are pursuing Raga Bhakti, which he after some time, became very interested. This is, he was engaged in he accepted photography to preserve his legacy. So at different times he had different attire, and there's a very interesting mustache he's wearing. And you notice on his lapel there's a pocket watch on a chain. And that's one of the ways that he kept track of time. Pocket watches weren't also, there was new. I mean, printing presses and systems of communication and pocket watches. So he kept track of time and meticulously to the minute kept a daily schedule, because when you're busy, you have to be punctual and regulated. So he was both. Much of what we know about him, or at least I grew up in the Hare Krishna movement hearing a lot about his being the High Court judge in Jagannath Puri. But before he became a High Court judge in Jagannath Puri, he had many services where he was what during the British rule was called a deputy magistrate. Deputy means he's deputized by the British government. Deputy magistrate. So the duties of a magistrate was not just in the courtroom. The duties in the British system spread beyond. It's a trustworthy and respected person that could make judgments that people would follow because he's a trustworthy person. So in one place where he was posted as the deputy magistrate, he came to hear of a group of people that were worshiping a ghost in a tree. There wasn't just one, there were several ghosts. There were ghost worshippers. And the innocent people were spooked, and the darkness of ignorance people were worshippers of the ghosts. And by this time, he's still a younger man, married, but a younger man. He had been introduced to Srimad Bhagavatam, not a handwritten copy, but a printed copy. And he read it, and he became, by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, then in turn, Chaitanya Charitamrita, that was it. he became a follower of Lord Chaitanya, just from his reading. And when it came to his attention in the place where he was the district magistrate, that there was a ghost worshippers under a banyan tree. This isn't a banyan tree, but it's a spooky looking tree anyways. And so a mendicant approached him for alms. And he said, I'll gladly provide you with alms. I would like you to do one service for me. The one service for me is you please sit under this banyan tree and recite Srimad Bhagavatam aloud. So it took him 30 days to recite Srimad Bhagavatam aloud. And the 30th day, the tree fell over. And the ghosts left because they were inhabiting the tree. They had no bodies. So no bodies, ghosts, forms were situated in the tree. When the tree fell over, they left. And because even as a young man, he had such faith in Srimad Bhagavatam that ghosts won't remain. Prabhupada followed the same principle, as you may know. The Prabhupada principle that he followed was there was a period of time in England when the 6 devotees that went there to establish Krishna consciousness had purposefully and effectively made friends with the Beatles. And at a certain point in time, John Lennon had bought an estate. And the estate was in not good condition. So he conveniently invited the devotees to stay at his estate, and they could have their spiritual program in the morning, and during the day they could make the place fit for living, cut the brush and fix the patios and, restore the property that was run down. So the devotees were happy, and they requested, so Prabhupada was given a place of residence. For some period of time, something like a month, Prabhupada stayed. And in the course of Prabhupada staying there, there's a term, a British term, kind of like a hired hand person. And he stayed a little bit more distant from John Lennon's home, but he was staying in a place that was inhabited by a ghost. And so he let the devotees know. The devotees told Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, ghosts won't stay with the loud chanting of the holy name, so go there and have kirtan, and the ghost will go away. And sure enough, that's what they did, and sure enough, that's what happened. Because of his faith in the chanting of the holy name, much like Bhaktivinoda Thakura's faith in Srimad Bhagavatam. As his profession expanded and the British government honored his capabilities more and more, they posted him as the not just deputy magistrate, but chief magistrate in Puri. And Puri's a big place, not only Rath Yatra, but it's a big place with a lot of people that come, tourists that come. And the British knew it was popular amongst the whole Indian population, so they wanted an Indian fellow to be the chief magistrate. So that they assigned him to that place. And when he went to Puri, he came to know of a fellow, kind of odd-looking fellow, that lived outside Puri. There's the urban, and then there's the residential areas around the urban, and then there's out in the countryside, kind of. So Bishika Sen stayed there, and he was a mystic that underwent great austerities, and he had mystic powers. And he had a way of attracting ladies. And then when he attracted ladies, he would pollute them. and it became a known thing amongst the intelligentsia and the cultured people in the city, in Puri. And so they went to complain to the chief magistrate, please do something. He's like, not like he's the police. He asked, so Bhaktivinoda asked the police refused. They were afraid of this man because he's a mystic and who knows what spell he might cast, and so they refused. So Bhaktivinoda Thakura went himself to meet this fellow. And he was telling everybody that he was Bhagavan Mahavishnu. I mean, like, he had the name Bhishika Singh, but that's who he was. And he had 2 associates with him, and they're also avatars. And he had thousands of followers. And he was well known for fasting for long periods of time. And so, and polluting ladies when they would come. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur confronted the man, and some discussion about these are accusations. What do you have to say? And there was some conversation, and then Bhaktivinoda said, "You should come to Puri and come to trial." So I'm asking you politely, come with me. And this mystic fellow had the capacity of, by shaking his head, fire would come out of his hair. So he started shaking his head, and fire came out of his hair, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't back down, just grabbed him by the arm. Let's go. And then when he understood how firm and strong and non-fearful was Bhaktivinoda, he said, "This is one of my leelas, I'll go with you." And so he went, and he was put in jail. And now when he's in jail, he started again his fasting program before the trial. And at the trial, witnesses were brought, and he had the chance to speak what he wanted to say, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur found him guilty. And as he was taken to the jail, on his way out the door, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had men with big scissors, because it is said that yogis stored their mystic powers in their hair. So he cut off his hair, and the man fell to the ground unconscious because his powers were gone. And we don't hear what happened to him later, but he was disgraced and punished appropriately, because that's what governance is supposed to do. Find if there's someone that's guilty of some crime, to punish them. And he punished him. And one other service that Bhaktivinoda Thakur did, as the chief magistrate, he also had the responsibility to oversee the activities at the temple. So one of the things that he found at the temple was the 52 offerings a day had collapsed. So he made sure that it became restored. Because 52 offerings a day, like when something is taken, something else is brought. So they had multiple kitchens going at the same time, and that's how Jagannath was supposed to be served. So he corrected that standard that had been lost or left behind. And in addition to the worship itself, he looked into the finances. And he found from looking into the finances that 80,000 rupees were missing. And those that's a lot of rupees in those days. It's a big number. I don't know what it is in today's numbers, but it's a big number. And he found out that where it went to the king. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur spoke to the king and said, "I found you, this is true. Do you have anything to say?" And, it's not true. So I find you you reimburse the deity of those $80,000, 80,000 rupees. And the way you can reimburse it is you just sponsor the Bhoga offerings. You know, sponsor the Sunday feast as a paddling for your embezzlement. And the king took exception. So what the king did was he decided to kill Bhaktivinoda Thakur. But he decided to kill him in the, a very tamasic way. There are yagyas by which, in the course of 30 days, a yagya is performed. At the end of the 30 days, the sankalpa of killing someone will result in the person being killed. So there are 50 pundits engaged in a yagya every day for 30 days, and with the intention that Bhaktivinoda Thakur should be killed. And as the days went by, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's health went down. And his wife, Bhagavati was her name, she tried persuading him to just leave him alone. And one of the daughters also had become seriously ill. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was determined, I'm moving forward. Justice must be done. Krishna will protect. So sure enough, his daughter revived, his health restored, and at the end of the 30 days, the king died. Because it's the nature of those black magic kinds of spells. If you send the spell, and the person is invincible, the spell comes back to the person who established it. The Brahmanas didn't have the problem. It was the man who was, the sponsor that had the problem. He died. King died. So now Bhaktivinoda Thakur is living in Puri as the chief magistrate, and one of the things that he did daily was in the Jagannath Vallabh Gardens. Some of you are a little familiar with Puri. There's the temple. It's as the Rath Yatra procession moves down Grand Road toward the Gundicha temple, it passes on the left side a large park or garden called Jagannath Vallabh Gardens. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, was giving Srimad Bhagavatam class every day. Then it was he called it Bhagavat Samsat. And then there was this very popular Babaji in Puri that was openly, lividly criticizing Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And in the course of his criticizing him, he got a reaction. Because you vilify a great Vaishnava, and you're going to have a problem. So he had a big problem. The problem was he contracted a very severe fever. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur knew that this man was criticizing him. He didn't go and, blast him or correct him or anything. He just continued with his Bhagavad class every morning. And this Babaji, one evening in the midst of his big fever, had a dream. And in the dream, Lord Jagannath appeared to him in his dream. And Jagannath instructed him, go and offer your respects and receive the mercy of Bhaktivinoda Thakur if you want to not die. So he came. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur knew all of what was going on. he didn't know about the dream of Jagannath coming. But he then made a remedy for his fever, and the man became well from the remedy of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's medicine. He wasn't a physician, but he knew. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur asked him, why are you criticizing me in this way? And he said, that Babaji said, because you're giving the Srimad Bhagavatam, but you're not wearing tilak. And you're not wearing neck beads. Then how can someone be a non-Vaishnava and speak Srimad Bhagavatam? That was what I was criticizing. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, oh, the reason I was without tilak and without neck beads is I have not found my Guru Maharaj yet. I love Srimad Bhagavatam, but I'm not wearing neck beads and tilak because those are two of the 5 items one receives when Diksha comes. That's the tradition. So Babaji understood he made the wrong move. It wasn't Bhaktivinoda Thakur made the wrong move. And they became close friends afterwards. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had, during his time, had a number of persons who, although he was a householder with 10 children and, a government position, etc., etc., seemingly worldly status, he had a lot of affection for Babaji's and vice versa. So they became close friends. Another individual that he writes about in his own biography, he very near to the Tota Gopinath temple, there was a place where a number of Babajis resided, and this particular some of them are kind of taking advantage of innocent public, and some of them are very genuine. So this Swarup Das Babaji was a genuine one, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur used to go and visit him, and they would discuss Krishna Katha. But he, for hours would just be engaged in bhajan. No one would see him, and twice a day, once in the late morning and once in the evening, he would come out. And when he came out, that was time that people could interact with him. And so that's the time when Bhaktivinoda Thakur would go. He knew his habits, and they would engage in Krishna Katha together. His place of residence was very near the Bhajan Kutir of Sanatana Goswami. Now, Sanatana Goswami, as we know, he visited Puri, he didn't stay in Puri, but when he stayed in Puri for the period of 2 months that he stayed in Puri visiting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he stayed at a certain place near the Tota Gopinath temple. And that place is still there where he stayed. And that's where these Babajis would hang out or make as their residence. But he found this particular, he writes very glowingly about the elevated consciousness of this particular Swarup Das Babaji. And in the course of our discussions, he writes, he gave me this particular instruction. He gives the Bengali, never forget the name of Krishna. So that's how his life was oriented as a Babaji. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a government officer and a father of 10. But he gave the same instruction. So the ashram activities are different, but the principle is the same, regardless of ashram. So here's one of the photographs. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a dapper dresser, at times. Here's one of his costumes or outfits. There's another one with a very different hat. And, he was playing the role or acting in the role of the High Court judge, chief magistrate, along with his 10 children. And obviously, if you're going to write 100 books, then you have to do a lot of writing. So many of the photographs that he posed for deliberately, like this, it shows books on his lap, because that was such an intrinsic part of his life. And his beadback on one hand and the books on his lap on the other hand, with large neck beads, as you see, displaying them as he did. And whatever he did, we didn't have dual roles. When he was in the courtroom, he had neck beads. This was after his initiation. In the same year that Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote Sri Chaitanya, His Life and Precepts, this book in English, a little skinny book, he wrote a much larger book called Jaiva Dharma, or in English, The Religion of All Souls. And it's a very thick book, very comprehensive book, and he engaged the format that many Puranas they use, the question-answer format. So that the format was, there were two young men from Calcutta, and they heard about the sadhus in Mayapur, so they made an arrangement to go to Mayapur. And when they went to Mayapur, they met Babaji Maharaj, and they presented questions. The whole book is just questions and answers like that, in discussion with Babaji Maharaj. So they would ask relevant questions, and in light of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Babaji Maharaj would give answers. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was preaching to the world in the question-answer format. He was the Babaji Maharaj, and he was giving answers to these two young fellows. Thoughtful questions and following logically, sequentially through the whole range of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. And as just mentioned, here's the English publication, Chaitanya, His Life and Precepts. Now this says 1897, published by the Gaudiya Press, but the book was actually distributed 1 year before, 1896. I mentioned the year because it's a significant year. That's the year of Srila Prabhupada's appearance. And after that, his son, who had established the Chaitanya Gaudiya Mat, from the Chaitanya Saraswat Mat, one of the branches, they reprinted it in English with Bhaktisiddhanta's logo on the cover. And this was 1897. What does this say? Oh, this is 1987. This is Bhaktisiddhanta reprinted it. Yeah, that's the year that's on the cover. But 1896. And then another book was written, published in 1901, entitled Bhagavad Arka Mrichimala. And so that book is topic by topic by topic, selected topics with verses from the Bhagavatam that embellish or illuminate a particular topic. And that's the book. Bhagavatam verses, slokas, directly drawn from Srimad Bhagavatam, that he takes a topic. He doesn't so much explain the topic as the Bhagavatam is illuminating the topic. But that was the format of the book. At the end of the book, he writes a little afterword. And the afterword was, normally one doesn't disclose these things. But I feel compelled because of the nature of what happened. What happened was, one fine day, Srup Damodar, we heard something the other day about Srup Damodar. Srup Damodar came in person and instructed me to write this book. He told me how it should be done, what its content should be, what the different divisions of topics should be, and instructed me thoroughly in the book. And he was so kind that he gave a very elaborate explanation of the 111 Bhagavatam. So that 111 Bhagavatam is in the front side of Bhagavad Arkamrichimala, because the first verse of the entire Bhagavatam is in one sense, it's like an invocation or summary verse of the whole book. That's what an introductory verse does, and it does it. And commentators on the Bhagavatam, aside from Bhaktivinoda Thakura, have said the same thing. Predecessor acharyas that commented on the first verse said the same thing about the first verse. So he now has Srila Damodar Goswami's version in the book. Now, how would you like to write a book instructed by Srila Damodar? How would you like to have a vision of Srila Damodar coming to you sometime and telling you, I'd like you to do this? Pretty amazing. The reason for going into this, and the fact that there's a nice painting of it, is this is the platform of Bhaktivinoda Thakura. He's a most elevated, and because of his elevated position, a recipient of mercy of predecessor Vaishnavas and Krishna himself. Another of his 100 books has this title. This is a photograph of at a certain period of time. He lived in now the city of Navadvip, because in the city of Navadvip, at that time, was thought to be the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But in the book, he describes that he had a doubt whether this recently established city on the western side of the Ganga was actually the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because the scriptures always describe the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as being on the eastern side of the river Ganga. And this town of Navadvip was new, and it's on the western side. So he had his doubts. And being a government officer, he had the opportunity to be able to look at maps, going back in the archives of ancient maps and ancient maps and ancient maps and histories, and he had access to all that information. Now, to go through that information anywhere, what to speak of India, that's a chore. But, he was meticulous in his searching, and he found that shortly after the departure of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the course of the Ganges shifted, because rivers do that sometimes. And what was the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was now underwater at the beneath River Ganges. And then after some time, the River Ganges shifted again, more western side. So in the current day, that the path of the Ganges is what the Ganges was during his time. So he became doubtful that where he was living was, in fact, the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And, to say that in Navadvip, it was risking his life. The reason risking his life, because they were Bengalis whose livelihood is dependent upon tourism and having temples and, claims this and that and the other thing that weren't true. And to say it's not true, they tried to kill him. He said it was not true. He risked his life, but to speak the truth. That was his fearlessness. That was one of his characteristics. So when he, one evening, he describes in this book that's shown on the screen, he was on top of a place called Rani Dharmshala. Dharmshala is like a place of residence for people in general. It's not like a motel room. It's just like a collective place where many people stay. So one evening he was up on the roof, and as he was looking out towards the Ganges, which is in the easterly direction, you saw a bright light, towering very tall in the air. There's no such structure. There weren't skyscraper buildings in Mayapur, but he saw it very vividly. And then he brought, the book describes, he brought his other friends or relatives or people that were with him, and they saw it also. And so he marked the spot, the direction from where he was to where this light was. And on the other side of the Ganges, he found, it's in the book, he found a piece of land that was useless for agriculture, because in that time, West Bengal was largely an agricultural place. But there was one place that wouldn't grow anything except tulsis. And he put two and two together. And he thought, this must be the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It won't stand, a rice field, but he'll grow tulsis very, very nicely. So, very near to where he was staying in Navadvip was Jagannath Das Babaji. And as we know from our disciplic succession, Jagannath Das Babaji was the preceptor, not the Diksha Guru, but the preceptor of Bhaktivinoda Thakura. So he went to Jagannath Das Babaji and asked, this is a photograph of Jagannath Das Babaji, and asked him if he would accompany him. And during this particular time, his age was very, very old. You could see his body was not in good shape. So he had someone carry him in a basket. His servant's name was Ishan. So Ishan carried him in a basket. They crossed the Ganges. When they got on the other side of the Ganges, and Bhaktivinoda Thakura escorted him to that place where only tulsi leaves would grow, or tulsi plants would grow, he jumped out of the basket and started dancing. And in Bengali said, this is it, confirming all of that research that he had come up with, saying that's the birthplace, not Navadvip is the birthplace. So such a bold person, he went through the streets, house to house in Navadvip, high court judge or deputy magistrate, asking everyone to give 1 rupee to build the temple for the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in a place where their livelihood was, their place was the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's the Risk Your Life mission. And, it wasn't popular. But he raised the money to build a little place, and after he built the little place, he requested his son, one of his 10 sons, one of his 10 children, Bhaktisiddhanta, to build a proper temple, because it was a little place. The little place is still there. It's just a little structure. So to build that temple, there's what the temple looks like. There was the first, after raising the funds, the establishing the foundation. And when establishing the foundation, they were digging down. And essentially it was what was for a period of time underwater, underneath the Ganges, the bed of the Ganges, because the Ganges had shifted. And as they were digging, they found this Adhoksaja Vishnu deity. The Adhoksaja Vishnu deity, here's the close-up, and it's on the altar, was the very deity that Jagannath Mishra worshipped. But when the Ganges course shifted, it was in the mud under the Ganges. And when it shifted back, it became the foundation for the temple. So there was, archaeological evidence that this aside from the most important evidence, that's Jagannath Das Babaji, and all these other evidences that confirmed this is the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then, of course, our founder Acharya came along, and with the idea, the vision of Bhaktivinoda Thakura, this tall structure with a brilliant light at the top, Bhaktivinoda Thakura described that one day, that vision was that one day a very large temple glorifying the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would be established, and he described it in his own writings. And that became kind of like the blueprint for Prabhupada's idea, and then the structure of the temple with 3 domes, etc., etc. So that's the Temple of Vedic. Prabhupada called it, as you know, Temple of Vedic Planetarium. But the seed of the idea came from Bhaktivinoda Thakura. So it's things that are going on even till today. I know the plan for what's going to go inside that place, and the place is there, but the planetarium part isn't yet built. There's teams of super intelligent people working on it. I've met some of them, astrophysicists and engineers and Bhagavatam specialists, and brainstorming on what's going to go inside that planetarium. That's the structure. The building a structure is one thing. Building a planetarium is another thing. So a place where he lived for a number of years, by the side of the Ganges, he gave it this nice name, Swananda Sukhada Kunj. And it was his home, and eventually where his samadhi was to go, in a Bhajan Kutir place. And although Gorkishore Das Babaji lived a reclusive life also, he shifted at Bhaktivinoda Thakura's request, and he made his residence near Bhaktisiddhanta's place. And he writes about it. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is in his 100 books, describes many things about Navadvip, and one of those is this place. There's 9 islands, Nava Dvipa, 9 islands, and one of those 9 is Godrum Dweep. The different 9 islands are established by crisscrossing of tributaries of the Ganga. And when they crisscross, they made 9 islands, and one of them is Godruma. So that's where he made his residence, just across from Mahaprabhu's appearance place. And he writes, this is his language, in Gita Mala, "My small cottage is shining beautifully within that most enchanting garden called Svananda Sukhada Kunj. Living there, I will sing Lord Krishna's holy name, and I will greedily hanker for that time when I will get the service of him and his associates." No, him can mean Lord Chaitanya, or it can mean Krishna, or either. Here's a photograph of the outside of the place, and we go through the gate and we see the inside of the place. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Bhajan Kutir, depends on what language you like. There it is in Bengali. And within the place there's a murti, his samadhi. His body was placed in samadhi at this place. Here's a close-up at 3:15 of his murti. And the personal servant of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there's a photograph of him, and his body was also placed in samadhi. And by one side, there's the Gora Gadadhar deities, not the very same ones that you saw, those ones that you saw, they're situated elsewhere. Here's a close-up of these very same deities. They're Neem deities, Gora Gadadhar. Notice the position of the hands of Lord Chaitanya and Gadadhar. Gadadhar is in the mood of Radharani. So the same as the deity that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave to Vishnu Priya, it's Lord Chaitanya with his hands extended like this, giving his mercy. So the Gadadhar deity is doing the same. The mudra of extending mercy. And Lord Chaitanya is on our left, or the deity's right, making a philosophical point with this other mudra. And there's the deity again. In the quarters, this is his home where he stayed, a little desk where he did some work, a little place with a mosquito net for where he would take rest. And here's the same place on a different day. He had a little fan. There was no electricity. It was just a kerosene, and burned the kerosene, and the fan would move. He had a bookshelf, as you see, just next to the fan. Here's an entire bookshelf, these old manuscripts, and some printed forms. His personal belongings, his kamandalu and other things that he would personally use on a daily basis. Bhaktisiddhanta had a place to stay when he came to visit his father. This is a desk where Bhaktisiddhanta would do some work, sitting behind in a little seat and sitting at this nice little desk. This is the courtyard, and Kirtan Mandap, and a nice Tulsi Devi worship place. And the back behind, that's Gorkishore Das Babaji's Bhajan Kutir, as mentioned. He agreed to come and spend time with Bhaktivinoda Thakura, although he had another place that he liked very much where people wouldn't bother him. But his Bhajan Kutir. And more photographs. This is just his home. On the far right, that's the temple, and then the mandap where kirtan or the assemblies would go. The place of his bhajan kutir. There's supposed to be some sound, but I don't hear the sound. Pushpa Samadhis of Bhaktivinoda Thakura and Bhaktisiddhanta, and I don't know who the third one is. This is a sitting place of Bhaktisiddhanta, very interesting, creative armchair, but personally designed by him. You see his photograph in the back. He's got it, appears to be during the cold season because most of the photograph is covered. A walking cane. And the two, for some period of time, they stayed in Jagannath Puri. Bhaktivinoda Thakur liked Jagannath Puri because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spent so much time there. So he established a place for his own residence in Bhajan, very near to the Samadhi of Haridas Thakur, which is very near to the sea. Of course, everything in Puri is near to the sea, but very close to the sea. And in time, ISKCON was able to purchase that place. So the devotees, the ISKCON devotees, established Prabhupada's murti next to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's murti. And here's a very interesting statement. This is 1908, 3 months before Bhaktivinoda Thakur accepted the renounced order. The Sir William Duke, Chief Secretary of Bengal, admitted that he had considered the Thakur's extraordinary abilities as a district magistrate a threat to the British control. He told Bhaktivinoda Thakur, "I wanted to take you out of office. I thought that if there were many men as qualified as you in Bengal, the British would have to leave." But now he begged the Thakur's forgiveness. After hearing his apology, Bhaktivinoda said, "I considered you to be a good friend and a well-wisher all along." Thakur admitted later to being astonished that this man wanted to do him harm. But he was so pleased by his repentant attitude that he gave him all his blessings. So here's a photograph towards the very end of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life. He did from time to time pose for photographs, and as his final days were spent absorbed in chanting of the holy name. And here's a poem that he wrote on the passing of Thakur Haridas. It's a well-known poem. He reasons ill who says that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still and sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy name around. So it's rhyming meter. Die and try and sound and around in his own English language. A great acharya who we're deeply indebted to. So that's a little bit on the life of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We've gone for a little more than an hour. It's a long class. Thank you for all sitting patiently and honoring Bhaktivinoda Thakur along with the rest of us. So let's see if somebody would like to have some discussion on some topic in relation to Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his life and his gift to us.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for a nice class. I learnt a lot today. So Maharaj, when was the first time Bhaktivinoda Thakur heard about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? At what age?
He heard about from or told to?
He learnt about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Learned about, okay.
At like early 16 or...
So what's your... It's a comment.
A question, Maharaj. So
is that a question?
Yeah.
From whom did he hear? That's your question?
Yeah, at what age he learned?
Oh, at what age? A young man.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know the age. A young man. Because he was who he was always interested in learning. And interested in learning, he was assiduous reader. He describes in this autobiography, he doesn't give the age, but he came across writings from the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then someone gifted him a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita. But that's what happened, but the age is your question. And I don't recall reading what his age was. Young man. College age type of age.
Okay.
That's where he became introduced, and it was like on fire. He just took off with it.
I have other question, Maharaj.
Okay.
Is it true that Bhaktivinoda Thakur had revived Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement?
He had a what?
Is it true that Bhaktivinoda Thakur only had revived Chaitanya Mahaprabhu?
Well, revived in the sense, in this sense, yes, because the two things. The popularity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his teachings had faded, meaning over the generations, they were the writings of the Goswamis and the teachings of Lord Chaitanya were very widely distributed by great acharyas, but then it kind of had dwindled. And the second, one of his 100 books was the 13 Appa Sampradayas, meaning people that took the name but twisted the teachings. And they had brands, 13 different names. And though he wrote a book, and this one says this, and that group says that, and and how they're deviated, and then here's the correct understanding. So he revived because he pointed out the popular deviated brands and the correct understanding, and widely spoke it, wrote it, left it behind him, and instructed others to do the same, particularly his son, but others. So yes, he revived. But it wasn't gone, it was just obscured, largely. But he had the acumen to wade through the deviated and understand the non-deviated, the pure. He was gifted, and you can say empowered. Therefore, one of the biographies is called the Seventh Goswami, because what the six Goswamis did, he did it again. So they revived. It's a good point. Good point.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Revived.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I was thinking about, seems like Bhaktivinoda Thakur has so much purity, and he was taking some action, strong action to revive or to give a original thing to the people. But seems like there were so many people around him was getting triggered, and in that extreme that wanted to wish to kill him. And I was just thinking that how we save ourselves from having that kind of envious, or they were not happy with whatever Bhaktivinoda Thakur were doing, and so much judgment was coming towards him.
Who was not happy? The people around him?
The king, Brahmin, and...
Oh, they were upset.
Yeah.
They were challenged by his purity.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to do something, like kill him, or remove him, or something. And so you're commenting.
No, my question is, how we can check our consciousness that we don't do the same thing, because unconsciously the judgment and the envy.
It's how do you overcome the conditioning of material consciousness? And envy is one of the conditioning factors. It's replaced by, if the antidote is a Vaishnava mood. Those that you worship Krishna. Those that are more advanced, you try to serve. Those that are peers, you make friends. And those that are less advanced, you try to assist them. So it just replaced, that sequence that's in the material consciousness with the spiritual discipline. And then so the grounding is, one of the offenses. The essence of the offenses is that which is spiritual to not see it as spiritual, but that which is spiritual to see it as material. And then comes, the emotion of material consciousness, envy and everything else. Imitation, distortion, so the remedy, your question then is, how do we prevent that kind of retaliation against or rebellion against or triggered against someone that's very spiritually elevated? It's the mode of service. To recognize, where does that lead? It's the mode of ignorance. Where does it lead? Down. I don't want to go down. I've seen what happens when people go down. I don't want to go down. So, okay, that's your brake pedal. Where's the gas pedal? And the steering wheel. So, towards what should I go, and how fast should I try to get there? Because I'm a conditioned soul, and I'm in an atmosphere that's surcharged with opposition, using Prabhupada's language. And so I don't want to make 2 steps forward and 10 steps back. I want to. So you go gently forward with a clear idea of why. And then from the why comes the what. but have the why in mind. For your information, during the upcoming Festival of the Holy Name, I'm planning a whole presentation on why. That's the title of the topic. Not what, but why. So I'm not minimizing the what is important, but behind the what is the why. And that when you have the right why, then you have the what and the how will also become clear. It's easy to align them and keep them in place if the why question has a good answer. And it takes time, more time to understand the why than to understand the what. How do we get in this situation? And all the other, the atmosphere, like Sanatana Goswami, we all know this, but I'll remind you of what you already know. When Sanatana Goswami first met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was way up here in the social world, way up there in the academic and Brahmana learned world. He was way up there. But he took the position of I don't know. And then he had two why questions. Why is it that I'm forced to suffer the threefold miseries of material existence? Adhyatmika, Adidaivika, Adibhautika. Why? Kayami. That's who am I? That was the who question. Then why do I have to suffer this way, that way? Why? I mean, we spend our time with the what, like I want to minimize the suffering, so I do this and do that and do the other thing to neutralize or minimize or reduce the suffering and get the opposite, more happiness, because we want happiness. We don't want suffering. So, but it keeps coming anyways. So why? So my response to your question, part of our response to your question is, aside from what, it's the why. And it's not an easy question to answer. But if you don't ask the question, you're not likely to get an answer. But if you ask the question, you might get an answer. If you get an answer, then you can align the what and the how. The path becomes very easy. And when you hear deviated teachings, you smile, but you don't go for it. And that's what Bhaktivinoda Thakura did. In his time, there was abundant deviation and very little truth. And he sorted through it. Not just because he was intelligent. Where does intelligence come from? Supersoul. What does Supersoul give intelligence? Dadami bodhi yogam tam yena mamupiyantite tesham satata yuktanam. So that's where we focus. And then the what and the how become not only an answer to a philosophical or a personal question, but it sticks. Because we know why. I'm having a nice time meditating on the why class. Because I believe it's a very important step, that when devotees don't take that step, sometimes, or most of the time, there's struggle, unnecessary. And those that do take the time and trouble to ask that question, even if they don't get the answer quickly, just keep asking the question, and then you keep asking, lights start to go on. You start to understand things that you couldn't understand before. On the why realm, and then the what and the how become more clear. But they've got support. Bhakti support. Sorry about that long-winded answer, but that's one of those buttons that I've been meditating on these days. Many of us, the problem is not we don't know what. To some degree, we may not know what, but the deeper problem is why. And someone can give you the what answer, and you nod your head yes, and the next moment you're doing something else. It doesn't stick. Or you may do it for a period of time, and then something else. It doesn't stick. I'm sorry I spoke so strongly. I think I just intimidated everybody. Okay, anyone else? Over here, there's some brave person.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. This class was truly a meditative class, especially with all the pictures. With all the pictures that you showed. Actually, I felt like I went back in time. So good, all the birthplace, and especially I've never seen the picture of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's old age. That was the first time I saw that picture. This one. So beautiful. Maharaj, my question is, it's just a simple question. Those 100 books Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote, do we have all of, because some common books like a bhajan books, Jaiva Dharma, and some of the books Maharaj mentioned today are available. Is all 100 books are available and translated, Guru Maharaj?
Most, the key ones, yes. And I don't know if the answer is 100%. But, you go through 50%, you keep yourself busy for the rest of your life.
I know. I'm so inspired to read, but the time. And then again, the question is about time management. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, being a Grahastha, High Court judge, 10 children, 100 books.
10 children.
How did he manage his time? I felt like his time didn't move when he did things.
Well, how is this? I will just say it again. He had a very clear why answer. And that drove the time management. Supposing, do it the other way. Supposing we've all had the experience. I'm not an exception. I've also had the experience. You start your day, we'll just take one day. You start your day with a plan. That's the what. And then something comes and something comes and something comes, and the what that you had focused on accomplishing, a project or something, it somehow just gets pushed off because there's emergencies that come in. So, and after some time passes, you're like, wait a minute. So, one of the principles of time management is, this is my phrase, blocks of time. When there's time to bathe, it's this time to this time. When it's time to eat, it's this time. When it's time to chant, it's this time. This is the block of time when I do these things. And answer correspondence, and in blocks of time. You just you stay with it. Busy people have to. If they don't do that, they're going to disappoint themselves and a lot of other people. So, be regulated with that. It's my language, but blocks of time, and you stay with it. Every day. Of course, there's some variations, but in principle, every day, and then it becomes your lifestyle. You just regulate it, and something else is pressing, and you put it in your parking lot. You do it later because you're thinking to stay regulated. There are things that are important to you if we're busy people, and you do those busy things in a allotted blocks of time manner. And when the bell rings, that's it. You move on to the next thing. Something else?
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Okay.
Online.
Okay, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Guru Maharaj, this is a comment from Shari.
Uh-huh.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. This is a comment. I was inspired by Bhaktivinoda Thakur's fearlessness when he was threatened or in any situation.
Yes.
And his ability to solve any kind of problems by being determination in his bhakti with strong faith in Bhagavatam and scriptures. I need this very much now. This is my takeaway to home from today's class. Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Okay.
And I have one more.
You have.
Yeah. From Adi Raja Das. Maharaj, what is meaning of submissive inquiry in a sense of lacking clarity to apply or adapt to?
It has nothing to do with our class.
Okay.
It's a nice question.
Thank you.
But
Maharaj.
I'm going to defer to another time.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Nice questions. And just stay focused. I'll say it so that you all understand why I'm responding this way. Not all the time, but there's multiple times when Prabhupada was asked questions, and he would ask the questioner, is this relevant to what we just spoke about for an hour? And they say, no, it's just curiosity questions. You pursue curiosity questions, and the force of what was spoken for the last 45 minutes, 1 hour, will be dissipated. And it'll be lost. So ask questions that are relevant to the topic we just discussed, please. It's not a chastisement, it's just following the footsteps. Because it's true, what Prabhupada said is true. And being a public speaker, I have a lot of experience. I have sufficient experience of people asking curiosity questions that have nothing to do with, not nice questions, but nothing to do with the topic. So ask at another time, please. Or whoever asks the question, they can send me a note, and I can give them an answer, and that can become part of this compendium of questions and answers that has compiled, and people ask all kinds of things. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Just thought, there are some devotees here who do not know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
They don't know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Oh my goodness. So say something about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Oh my goodness. Okay. When I know that there's new people in the audience, who is new? You raise your hand. Okay. Do you know who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? No. Do you know who is Krishna? Yes. I don't really know who Krishna is, but yes, I know who Krishna is. So, when in Bhagavad Gita, what's the concluding message of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita? Answer, 1866. Sarvadharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam praja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishami masuchaha. That's Krishna's concluding message to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. A few other verses. That's chapter 18, text 66. A few other verses, and Bhagavad Gita closes. And that's the main message, the essence of the entire Bhagavad Gita. That is, all the other teachings take a secondary position to one teaching. What's that one teaching? Mamekam sharanam. Mamekam sharanam. Take shelter of me, surrender unto me, and I'll give you all protection. After Krishna left the planet, the scriptures describe, he considered, after my departure, it marks the end of Dwapara Yuga, the beginning of Kali Yuga. So Krishna is considering, people in Kali Yuga, how are they going to understand Bhagavad Gita? How are they going to understand surrender unto me? How are they going to understand this? So one of the things that will help them understand is if they get a nice teaching and a nice example, a nice teacher that tells them how to surrender unto me. So I could send another nice teacher or give other teachings, but even better is if I can come myself and I'll demonstrate how to. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself teaching how to. And at the beginning of this age, Kali Yuga, there's the principal means of achieving the how to, or it's called Yuga Dharma. What does Yuga Dharma mean? Yuga Dharma means for each of the 4 yugas, cycles of time, Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga, and after that it goes back to Satya Yuga, cycles around and around. So during each of those 4 yugas, there's a principal means of achieving spiritual perfection. In this age, that age, the next age. In Kali Yuga, the principal means is hearing and chanting the glories of the personality of Godhead, specifically hearing and chanting his name and his qualities and activities and so forth. Shravanam, hearing, Kirtanam. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was Krishna teaching how that Shravanam, Kirtanam can be best done. He gives the Yuga Dharma, the chanting of the holy name. So Krishna teaching how to, and the method, principal method. And around that principal method, concentric circles going out, different ways of devotional service, starting with hearing and chanting of Krishna's holy name. And then Krishna's topics, Bhagavad Gita, the topics about Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the circle keeps expanding. But it's just, the essence is the chanting of the holy name. So Lord Chaitanya, is Krishna himself teaching how to surrender to Krishna, and gives the means, starting with the Yuga Dharma, the principal means for this age of Kali, how our original spiritual consciousness can be revived. That's who is Lord Chaitanya. Krishna himself, in the mood of a devotee of Krishna, teaching how to. Starting with chanting of the holy name. And then, so that's like this life and his precepts. His life, he lived he set an example and gave essential teachings in the how-to category. And that's his life, his teachings in his life. So then you can take that and expand it. So the written literature about Lord Chaitanya is abundant. And foremost is this epic biography of his life and teachings called Chaitanya Charitamrita. Here's one other thing, an important thing, and that is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. And the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam are the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. They're identical. So by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, you're getting the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. You're getting introduced to Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya is introducing us to the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. So therefore it takes such a prominent role. Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Very prominent role. For this particular age, Yuga Dharma. Okay, looks like we're ready to close. Thank you all for coming, especially those of you that I didn't even know that you don't know much about Lord Chaitanya. If I had known, I would start it a little differently. I'll try to do better this evening and tomorrow and so forth. So this evening, we're going to start a 4-part section of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, which means Krishna's pastimes, Canto 10, chapter number 12. And it's a pastime when Krishna was 4 years, 4 months old. So it's like childhood pastime. So a lot of it is just what did Krishna do when he was 4 years, 4 months? That's how it's going to start. Like super simple, but very attractive because he's Krishna. And the word, his name, means all attractive. So commonly, little children are, adults like little children because they're so cute and so forth. They're a little naughty sometimes, but and Krishna is all attractive. So we're just going to hear about the all attractive childhood pastimes of Krishna with his friends, what they did every day. That's tonight. But we'll do a little background so people can catch where we're coming from, or where the Srimad Bhagavatam is coming from. So I had some Mahaprasadam. Do we have it? Yes, or they're gone? Yes. I'm going to